Hi, my name is Katie, and this is Katie's Corner in Space. Today we're going to go over Outlander Season 6, Episode 7, Sticks and Stones. And oh boy, are there some fun storylines opening up here. Lizzie, oh dear. Yeah, let's get to it. Claire is blamed and ostracized for the death of Malva and her baby. Jamie does his best to defend her as the Ridge glowers at her each time they see her. Even at Malva's funeral, Jamie could not carry Malva's casket, and Claire was not allowed to carry the babies. Roger decides his destiny in this time is to be a minister. And after a chat with his father-in-law and his wife, the decision is made and he will get himself ordained as quickly as he can. Claire's grief and guilt turn her to ether again as more hallucinations of Lionel Brown appear just to throw any pain she's had back into her face. While Jamie suspects there's something afoot, it isn't until Claire confesses not only her usage of the substance, but her ever-mounting guilt because of all of the harm that came to those she cares for just because she traveled back in time. Jamie sees the true depth of her guilt. It's then both Jamie and Claire realize how deeply she has held on to any hurt in her life, but Jamie reminds her of all the good that has happened. Their child, their grandchildren, Fergus and his family as well. None would have happened otherwise, which eases her some. Lizzie turns up pregnant, and so after some quick decision-making, Jamie performs a handfasting, and now Lizzie and Kezzy are married. Lizzie turns up pregnant, and after a quick jaunt to Roger and Bree in their cabin, Roger performs a handfasting, and now Joe and Lizzie are married. Yeah, decisions are hard even in the 18th century. In the final scene, armed men are surrounding the big house, and Jamie's alone, left to defend his wife as they've come to arrest her. And those are the big points in this week's episode. And we get some really interesting twists and turns. I do like that they flash back to Malva confessing her sins at the meeting house, but it just goes to show just how conniving and how manipulative she was. And I'm really disappointed in Mr. and Mrs. Budd. They aren't as steadfast as far as being able to stick with the family. They're simply more worried about their own reputations. Ooh, I really liked how the makers used the past villainous voices from Claire's 30 years that we've followed her. They included everybody that you can think of, though it was mostly men's voices echoing, you could hear Galus, and it was just all these familiar threats and echoes of her past coming back to haunt her. I think the makers did a really good job of conveying her discomfort and how she feels haunted by all of the things that have happened in her past. I will say that when Roger and Bree are talking about his future and his prospects of being the minister, I was almost disappointed in Bree's negativity and the way she's talking about how difficult it was growing up with a parent that was constantly on call. But she turned it around at the end, and I think it was just her going over the difficulties they could have and how this could affect their children. I had to roll back my opinion and think that she was being very mature. Let's talk about this now before the problems come up later. Now, I have been looking forward to the reveal of Lizzie and the Beardsley twins pretty much since they introduced the Beardsley twins. Again, this was also done in the book, though, again, in a very different manner. They made a point in the show to say that in no way was Lizzie tricked into having relations with both boys. However, in the book, again, this is done very differently. And I can see why, for TV, the way this played out was just much more believable and would allow a larger audience to stay in tune with the story while still kind of shaking our heads at Lizzie. And because no matter how you cut it, in the 18th century, relations before wedlock with one guy is bad enough. Not sure if with twins makes more sense, but it did to her. Now, of course, what'll be funny is the fallout from the two marriages. Certainly, Jamie isn't all that impressed with their little trickery. We'll just have to see how this plays out. And really, we kind of have to love Lizzie, regardless of her decisions and life choices, because she gives Claire a little bit of comfort in her words that it was her knocking at the clinic's door, not Malva, that last moment. So when she was having her dream, couldn't have been her killing Malva, because Malva wasn't the one who had been knocking at the door at that time. Claire finally fesses up to Jamie how she's been dealing with all of the issues in her brain, the emotions she has not been able to deal with, the confrontations of hallucinations she has not been able to deal with. And the big thing is she's been trying to do it all by herself. And Jamie rightly points out that after he had been virtually destroyed, it was her who helped bring him back to life. And he just wants the opportunity to do the same thing for her. It's that unconditional love that the two have that really keep bringing us back to see what will happen next. I just kept to giggle every time I think that it's sweet, innocent Lizzie. I would like to take a moment to mourn the Sin Eater who did his job, did it well, and no one was there to do it for him when he finally passed. The gruesome finding by Ian that Sin Eater has died and is missing some of his fingers. I am glad that they revealed that to the group and leaving them with kind of another mystery. We know Malva took some fingers, but perhaps there was more to it. And nothing was really resolved as far as who did kill Malva, although they do know now how they need to work out who it could be by using the talents and things that they have learned by watching Perry Mason. One quick side note, someone had pointed out that the scene where Claire has taken ether in the last episode was virtually word for word through the book. The one point of contention is still, was that Claire who was actually going after Malva, or was that part of the hallucination? I think we answered that this episode. But yet again, the inconsistencies between the book and how they are relaying the story on the series makes it difficult to really predict moment by moment if things will be the same. We've had characters who died in the books come back to life with no problem in the TV show. We've had a bear be a man, and now we've had a slightly different story as to how Joe and Kezzy end up with Lizzie. So it's always interesting to see how things will play out on the screen. And sometimes news stories that we get to have because we're getting it through a second medium. And that's my quick summary and overview thoughts for Outlander Season 6, Episode 7. I've really enjoyed the episode itself altogether. I felt really bad for Claire and Jamie as they're trying to go through their days, and there's really no outrunning what an entire community thinks of you when you're the head of that community. I want to say a big thanks to everyone who have been coming to watch my videos. My last Outlander video, Season 6, Episode 6, reached 100 views, which may not seem like a big number, but for me, I've only been doing this for a little less than 2 months. Didn't even know how to edit a video when I started this up. So I want to thank you so much for coming back, for checking out my overviews and liking and subscribing and coming back again each week. Thank you so much. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget that you can subscribe below so you'll know when my next one is coming out. You can like below so I'll know that I'm doing a halfway decent job. And you can comment below because I've gotten into a habit of checking them and occasionally commenting right back. Thank you again. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to check out this one, and I will see you next week. Bye.